How long do we go, Gio?
About an hour and a half.
Goodness. Well, I'm a talking machine.
Oh, no, that's what I like, man. That's what I like.
I'm pretty familiar with headphones. Are
you?
Oh, yeah. I flew 1,300 hours in combat wearing them, so you don't forget that.
Headphones always have to stay on, huh?
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast, Grandpa.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad you could come on.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to start off with a few questions, a little bit about yourself, when you were born, where you grew up, and a little bit about your parents. So if you go ahead and talk about that.
All right. I'm 89 years old now, and I was born in 1933 on a Red Clay Hill, Mississippi, Benton County, about 30 miles south of the Tennessee line, right out of Memphis. And that's my earliest recollection. I was probably 4 or 5 when I can recall. And the incident with me getting stuck in the churn, I'll tell you about. I was playing bump jacks on the floor and lost the red rubber ball into the churn, and I climbed in it to get it out and couldn't get out of the churn. And my mother put me under her arm and ran me a half a mile to my grandma's house, a log house they still live in today, built in 1835. And they greased me up with butter and got me out of the churn. And I said, that was one of my earliest remembrances.
Oh, man.
You don't forget that deal.
No.
Running with her down a hill is down a hill. But next thing I remember there was I decided to run away. And so I took my little bag, and my mother was sewing on the porch for the trundle machine. You had to pump it with your feet to sew. And she was sitting out there where it was cool. And I told her I was running away, and it didn't excite her at all. She just kept on sewing. I thought, if I'll go slow, maybe she'll say, don't go. And she didn't. She just kept sewing. And I trotted off down the hill, and after I got through crying, the snot was rolling, and tears and everything, I'm sure. And I crawled back up the gully to make sure she knew I was gone. And she just kept on sewing. And I finally just had to surrender and go up there and say, well, I'm back. And she never did quit sewing. I said, she taught me a lesson right there. Yeah. I never tried it again.
Yeah.
But then when my dad built a new house in 1938, and I was about 5. And we moved to the new house, and that was about a half a mile from the log house that my ancestors had been in for 4 generations. And so that's where I grew up on that. I have a nephew now that's a retired plumber out of Memphis. His wife is Kenny Simpson, and that's where they live now. And it's all the same outside. It's all modern inside with everything modern, but was a dog trot cabin. That's what they call them. And it was built one room, and then later they would build another room right across from it, and they had a space in between them. And that's where they would put the dogs on a cable or a chain, and they would guard the only 2 doors to the 2 cabins. And if anybody came or animals, well, they had problems with timber wolves there, and they would keep the wolves run off because they'd have to get by those bulldogs in order to get in either door of the 2 doors and 2 cabins. And I remember when I was little, they had made a floor there, and it was a roof. It covered the entire cabin. And there was things upstairs I'd never seen before, many guns from the Civil War. And I have delivered some of those to the museum in Ashland now. And they wrote the story of where they came from the Battle of Shiloh.
Yeah.
And that's the background.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Benton, he owned a sawmill. Is that how?
51 years. My dad owned a mill for 51 years, and he was exempted from the Second World War because he was cutting lumber for the military to create aircraft engines. And they estimated 9 million board feet.
Wow.
And so he was exempted, and of course he was in his 20s. My dad was young. My mother and he were 17 and 18 when they married. And he ran that mill all those years.
When was he born? Do you know?
In 1912.
Okay. Okay.
Sure was. And I knew my granddaddy, Moody, John Amos, and his daddy was Thomas Jefferson, which is pretty typical in those days. They still named him after the Civil War.
Oh, man.
And but that's uniforms in the old cabin, the old log house. Had full-size uniforms up there from from the Confederacy. Yeah, we used to go into the cellar. It was built on a red clay hill overlooking a creek, a big creek, and it's called Yellow Rabbit Creek. And we found out we could go into the clay walls of that cellar and take a rod and push and find the soft places, then take a long spoon and dig them out. We'd dig out little snuff boxes full of molded bullets for the muskets. Wow. And that's how they'd hide them. Because when you took wet clay and stopped up the hole, it would dry and it looked like the rest of the wall. But they know how to measure from one point, and they know where to dig. And we dug that whole wall. It almost caved the house in because we were digging for those things. Yeah. They're still there because they closed it off.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Goodness.
But and there were bear traps there, full-size bear traps, this big, the kind that closes like this.
Yeah.
And when I left there, those bear traps were still there, and they used them. Oh, yeah. But it was quite interesting.
So you told a story earlier when we were sitting out there when you first remember getting electricity to the house.
Oh yeah.
Can you tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, that would probably been 46 or 47, and they was trying to get electricity to our house for Christmas, and the weather got so bad, the ground was all soft, and they told my dad they wasn't going to be able to do it, and he asked them why, and they said, well, we can't get the poles in. And my dad said, what do you mean? And they said, well, we can't get in the fields to dig the holes. He said, just mark where you want the holes. I'll get the holes. And so they dug the holes. I don't know today how. I said, probably with an extended handle on a post hole digger. And they dug the holes and put the things in and strung the wire and turned it on just about 2 days before Christmas. Yeah. Yeah.
And do you remember not having electricity in that house?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I remember we had no indoor toilets. You had to go to the outside to a toilet. And when the CCCs came in, that was after there was, I guess, just after the Depression, and the government was paying for people to come out to help poor people. Mm-hmm. And they came and built us an outdoor toilet. I mean, a nice one, And no toilet paper. You couldn't go buy toilet paper. Sears Roebuck catalog as your toilet paper. Oh yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I remember those days very distinctly, very clear.
Yeah. Do you remember the electricity turning on?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We just thought it was marvelous,
Yeah, I bet.
And the bulbs on the Christmas tree was huge. I've got some of those.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's where I grew up, and my dad did very well for a guy that started off that couldn't read. Basically, he could read, but it was real slow, and so he did real well. He wound up with a lot of land, and we had. In my family, we had 1,700 acres there, and that's a lot of land in Mississippi. And but after it's been divided, 2 generations had 12 siblings. One had 12, and another, William Simpson had 12, and Sam Simpson had 12.
Yeah.
So there's 24 people, and they divided it 27 times, and they got 1,700 acres apiece.
Wow,
yeah.
How did that land come into the?
Well, he came there from Duck River, Tennessee, and the land that he moved off of, Dolly Parton has her business.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and they sent the state of Tennessee sent us a copy of the newspaper article, and that was the same land. It said Sam Simpson left here and went to Benton County, Tipper County, Mississippi, and that's exactly what how it started. And the president paid Sam Simpson for carrying the Indians to the reservations, and he paid him by granting him sections of land, 640 acres in a section. And the President of the United States, I've got signed by the President himself, granting the land to my great-great-granddaddy, Sam Simpson, the one that moved from Duck River, Tennessee down there. And he was already established because he brought most of his stuff with him.
Yeah. And
they said he couldn't bring all of his corn. He had so much corn he couldn't bring it, so he made it all in whiskey and brought the barrel. That's the true story. And I've got a slat out of that barrel.
Oh, my
Yeah, it came out of the old smokehouse. I used to go in there and play when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I got one of those slats one time. It was about 3 feet long, and I brought it in, and I said, what is this? It's all white looking and all frosted looking. And somebody, a friend of my grandmother probably, she said, that's a slat out of the old whiskey barrel. And that salt had made it kind of fizzle up on the outside. But yeah, but he kept doing that. He carried the Indians twice, two bunches, to Memphis and put them on a boat and carried them down and up the Arkansas River to Oklahoma.
Oh wow.
And they paid him, and so he got 1,280 acres, as grants. And then every time he'd get $18, he would go to the land office in Pontotoc, Mississippi, by horse and buy 180 acres for 18 cents an acre. Of course, that was, that's pricey, I guess, for him. But that's what he was doing, and he wound up with all that land. And he had a brother, Robert Simpson, right across the Tipper River from us, and he had 10,000 acres.
Wow.
And then Sam had 17,000. I said, so any place you went there, if you ask whose land is this, they just said Sam's. Yeah. But that's the background on that.
Oh man.
Yeah, my mother graduated from Ashland High School, and that was 7 miles away, and the roads were so bad she had to go to boarding school. You couldn't get 7 miles. So she went to boarding school 7 miles away. Oh, yeah.
Man.
That's where my dad met her. And they called him Gene Autry. It was his nickname, your granddaddy Moody, my daddy. And they called him Gene Autry because he could rope cattle and he could do everything that cowboys did. So if they had a bad cow or something, or a bull, they'd call my dad and say, send Gene Autry over here. And he'd go over there and lasso them and whatever he wanted to do with them. But he rode up to my mother, and she was walking around the courthouse. And she was eating an apple, and my dad wanted to impress her. So he rides up on his horse, and he said, give that my horse a bite of that apple. And she started to lay it down. He said, oh, no, just hold it out. Said, I'll tell him to be careful and bite it out of your hand. And she let that horse bite out of her hand. And he said, I thought I was really impressing, And he said, I thought I'd do something else. So he rode the horse up the outside stairs to the courtroom. And he got up on the step, where you turn in, it was a landing.
Okay.
He couldn't get the horse down. It's a true story. And they said it took half of Mississippi to get the horse down. They had to tie its legs together, a bunch of men to get the horse down.
Oh, man. Well,
and then my grandmother Simpson, that was before he married, she didn't like him because he's just wild. Yeah. And
that's where I get it from.
You know what she told that she lived her last 11 years with my parents. They took care of her. And she told my dad one of the greatest compliments he ever had, I'm sure. And she told him, she said, Benton, I'm glad the Lord let me live long enough to know who really loved me. And she'd been one for him all those years, not against him, but just didn't really approve of him because he was so wild. And but that's a true story. She told him, said, you're the one that cared for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. A legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, they all grew up there. And my uncle went to Mississippi State and got a degree in agriculture. And my other one got out of the Navy at about 17 after the Second World War. And he had an unbelievable career in the Navy. Yeah. He went in on the beachheads with a Caterpillar crawler. And when the LCIs and the LCMs would come in and drop the door down for the troops or machinery to come off, they'd get stuck on the sand. And he and his buddy was responsible for putting a winch on them and pushing them back in the ocean. And he said the Japanese was shooting full force at the Navy and the Army coming in, and they was shooting full force. And he said, we was in between.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's my uncle, Billy Reese. And
I don't know what year it was, but you told a very interesting story about a Jonathan Harper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What year was that? Could you tell that story?
Yeah, I can tell you when the flood was. I could have been reading about it recently. It's 1927. The Mississippi flooded, one of the all-time floods, and it washed away the village, the little town that they was living in. It was in a double switchbacks in the river, and their town was in line of it, and the river came straight across and took it out and drowned it almost everybody. And of course, in those days, there was no TV and anything, so we didn't know about what was happening over there. Of course, I was like I was more like 5 or 6. And my dad was in Ashland, and no paved streets, just gravel around the courthouse. And this young boy come up on a horse, no bridle, just a rope around his neck, and asked my dad for some money. And my dad said, well, I don't have any money. I'm a farmer, and I've got my 3 kids at home. They're right after the Depression. And he told him, he said, I won't go home with you. And my dad said, well, I just don't think I can take care of you. I got all I can take care of. But he said, when he left riding the mule going north towards Highway 72, he said I couldn't leave him. And I turned around and went up there and found him and said, give him direction. He said, I don't know what I'll do with you, but said, you come down there and I'll take care of you. And he stayed there till he's 21 years old.
And this is?
It's Jonathan Harper.
And this is rural Mississippi, 1920s,
yes,
African boy.
Yes, taken in by a white family. And they built him a house behind our house because they was afraid they would burn our house down because my dad took him in. That's a fact. And my dad took him in anyway. And during the 60s, when they thought there might be a rebellion, and it's mostly black where I live, and older black men came to my dad and said, Mr. Moody, you don't have to worry about anything. No matter what happens, you're safe. Because they knew the story.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And now he's got two sons, grandsons that are playing pro football in Florida. The two got, he told me, I think about 12 offers from different universities.
Wow. Yeah.
Because he was 6'4", weighed 270, and it was all muscle, and he was smart, had a big brain, and but anyway, that's what happened there. And
I remember you tell some stories about taking him to church
Yeah.
when you were younger. And could you tell a little bit about that?
Right, yeah, we went to church every Sunday in Sunday school, of course. And they raised the window of the church, and he'd sit in the car and listen to the Sunday school lessons, and he'd listen to the sermon.
Because he wasn't allowed to go in church at the
Well,
time.
we never tried it because it would have caused such a mess. It probably would have meant that we couldn't keep him anymore, whatever. I don't know all the surroundings, how that worked. But my mother taught him there was no school for him. And she taught him to read and write, and I say to the day, he had a better education than I did, for sure.
Yeah.
When I got out of high school, he could have beat me in any kind of testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she taught him. And, that's a true story.
And
then,
did he work on the sawmill too? Or
he did some, but most of the time he farmed.
Okay.
And it was interesting. I remember one day we were sitting on the porch of our new house, and we could see across the river over where a lot of the farmland was, and we could see dust coming up. And we could hear hollering going on, but they was over there, and Joe was fighting with the guy that they'd hired, another black guy, to help. And when my dad came home from the meal that day, my mother told him, said, Joe was fighting with the guy over there in the field today, and I could see him. Said, I hollered, and they quit fighting. My dad said, well, what is that all about? And he said, he was mistreating my mules. A true story.
Man.
Yeah. But a mule tried to run away with a two-wheel cultivator, which was modern at those days. And that mule was about to run away with that cultivator. He grabbed that mule and rode it down in the field and bent its neck back under him and held that mule while somebody come and then hitched him, took all the gear off of him so he wouldn't tear up that cultivator. A grown mule. And I told you he was about 250, 260. Oh, yeah.
He, you said one time he left when he was a kid to go try to find his family.
Yeah. When he was about 14, I guess, he told my parents, they said, he called them Mom and Daddy. He said he told Mom and Daddy, I want to go back to Arkansas and see if I can find any survivors. And so he had a new bicycle, new clothes and everything, and money, and a phone number he could call. We didn't have telephones, but there was one that the whole neighborhood used. And if you get in trouble, call this number. And he was gone, and he's gone and gone. Well, the first thing I need to tell about is when he left. We was in the front yard of a new house, and all grass, beautiful green, and Joe came out of the car shed with his new bicycle and his new clothes on, and all ready to go. And we all hugged him and everything. Everybody was crying, and my parents included. And he rode out of sight. And we was all just crying like, we was heartbroken, our brother and our son, basically. And he came riding back up, and he was crying. And he gets off, and we talked a while. My daddy talks to him, and he gets on his bicycle and goes out of sight. And we thought, well, that's probably it. And then he comes back. And my dad told him, said, Joe, we can't do this all day. This is crazy. He said, you either put the bicycle back in the garage and we'll go to work, or you can go on to Arkansas. And he didn't come back. He went to Arkansas. He'd gone about 2 or 3 weeks. And one day he come walking up, all skinned up, knees and elbows. And my dad said, well, what happened? And he said, well, I found one sister. And he said, but I was holding the back of a guy's truck. It was all rural roads. And he said, slow down and let me hold the truck on the bicycle. And he said, they ran into a hole, and it threw me off, and the bicycle got on the wheel, and it run over the bicycle and ruined it. And so he said, I had to leave it. So he had to walk back.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, it's about 150, 200 miles. Same route that he made when he was with that horse.
Wow.
And he walked back, and he said, almost run over me. But, yeah, I hadn't, I've been looking about the town, how many people live there and how many live there then and so forth. But
So he, when he left, when he got older, what did he end up doing in his life?
Well,
yeah.
He left and went to Miami. And like I said, he was very smart and in ingenuity. He just could do whatever. He knew how to farm. He knew how to handle equipment and repair it and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I'll tell you another story. We had a big clock, and every time we'd go somewhere and he didn't go, we'd come back and the clock wouldn't be running right. My dad said, "You been working on the clock?" "Yes, sir." "Did you fix it?" "No, sir." But every time we come back, he would go with us most of the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes he didn't, and he'd work on the clock while we was gone. But anyway, he wound up, he owned a cement trucking company. He had 7 mixers, those big trucks. He had 7 of those, and he had a rental fishing boat company. He rented boats for people to go fishing. And then he owned a mobile home park. And I was in the Air Force. I was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base going through electronic basics down there. And he had his wife, and another story about that, he met her when he went to his sister's funeral. And he met her and came back within 10 days with a new wife. And he came in and grabbed my mother and put her up like this and said, "Mama, I'm home." And she said, "Put me down, Joe." But anyway, she caught him in the back room. She said, "Joe, you probably made a mistake." Said, "You can't meet a woman and within a week know you want to live here." He said, "Mama, you don't know this woman." And he turned out he was absolutely right. She was a school teacher and she was beautiful. And she raised 3 sons. And there's a story about one of them. One of them went to the Marine Corps, was up in Parris Island. And he went AWOL and went home to Fort Lauderdale, where they lived in. And
one of his sons.
Yeah. And he told Joe told his own son, Joe, his name was, we called him Joe. He told him, said, "You can spend this night at home. And the next morning, me and you are going back to the Marine Corps." He said, "You swore an oath." And he said, "You're going to fulfill it." He carried him back to the Marine Corps. He carried him before his commander. Here he is, 270 pound, articulate. And he told that commander, he said, "I brought this boy back, said he won't give you no more trouble." And they believed him, and they didn't even charge him. He went ahead and graduated boot camp and the whole bit and served his term in the Marine Corps.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And he had a brother that was a disc jockey in California. I don't know him, but that's one of them. And then the grandsons, the ones that's playing football for 2 big universities in Florida somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But it's quite a story.
Do you stay in contact with any of his sons or daughters or anything? Yeah.
A granddaughter, I have his name and phone number, and I talk to him often.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've invited him to come up and spend, stay. His wife is from Ohio or somewhere in that area. And he said they sometimes come through that area. And I said, "Let's come and stay with us, Yeah. And I told him stories that he had no idea. His grandfather had trained him, and he could carpenter, wire, plumb, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, well, he may want to forget some of it. I don't know the early part, but I was surprised. And when I started telling boy, their ears perked up. They wanted to hear those stories.
Yeah.
And I told them, and about the time he thought he'd put my eye out, we had some tilings made out of cypress, about 6 inch by 6 inch hollow. And when there's a low place in the field, we'd dig it out and put a ditch and put those tiling in and cover them up. And then every time it rained, instead of making a pond, it'd run into the river. And they had those under a big shed. And when you needed them, you'd just go up to the shed and pick them up. And I went up there, and we found out that there was mice and rats in those things. And so when they had beds, and when you'd punch them, they'd come out, and I'd stand there with a paddle and slap them when they come out. And I was looking in a hole, and he'd come through with him and hit me right there. And when he come around there with nothing but blood, he'd just out and out. And he thought he'd put my eye out, and he run, and I was under his arm, and he ran to the river with me to wash my eye out. And then he saw it wasn't put out,
Yeah.
But times like that, you don't forget,
Oh, yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah. That's good. You had a story how you joined the Air Force, and the recruiter actually was walking by or drove by or something while you were on it. Can you kind of tell that story?
Yeah, I was plowing in a cotton field. My dad was running a sawmill somewhere, and I was making a crop, so to speak, and I guess I was 19. And this guy stopped his car. He was a recruiter, and he came out in the field, and I was just about to let the crop get away. What that means is that you can't keep up with it. The grass is getting it faster than you can keep it cut. And I looked up, and I could see those contrails up there, and that looked cool. And I said, yeah, I'm ready. And he said, well, come to Tupelo in the morning and I'll get you signed up. And so my dad took me to Tupelo. And 28 years later, I got out of the Air Force. My dad said, boy, if I'd known you'd be gone 28 years, I wouldn't have carried you to Tupelo. And then he laughed and gave me a hug and said, make good decision.
Yeah.
But
do you want to talk a little bit about your time in the Air Force and kind of where you were stationed?
Oh, yeah.
I know you have some great stories there. And
yeah, I moved all over. We moved 31 times, and we lived in not all over Africa, but in Africa, and 8 years in Europe and Alaska and Europe, Asia, all over, and over 28 years. And my love was electronics, and I focused it all on, we call it airborne electronics, air warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And so I focused my whole career based on that. And of course, I was wild as an Indian when I first went in before I married. And they asked me once, how many times you promoted? And I said, 11. And they said, that's not possible. They only have 9 promotions. I said, yeah, but I got busted twice. And that's when I was a wild Indian.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you how that happened, real simple. When I went to the Air Force, I carried my dad's checkbook in my pocket. And I could write a check anytime I wanted to. He didn't even ask me why. He knew I wasn't going to be wasteful or something. But when they would discipline you, all they would do was just take a stripe, and that was just a little bit of money. It was all nothing. And a guy came out of the Marine Corps and became my commander. And he busted me one time because I kept going home to date my wife, the one I was married to for 68 years. And I kept going home and I told him up front, I said, I'm going home every weekend. If I'm not in jail, if you don't put me in jail. And they said, you're going to be right here. And I said, okay. And I went home every time. And one day I come back on, I guess a Sunday, and on Monday morning, and they said, the commander wants to see you. And I went in, and I was arrogant. I recognized it. And I went in, and I said, he said, where are you worried? And I said, well, I told you guys that I was going home on weekends. And I said, that's where I'm going, and unless you stop me. And I guess he thought that's pretty brazen. And I think being a Marine, that kind of weighed on him. He wasn't too much against that. He understood what I was saying. But he said, I'm going to take you a stripe. And my stripes I had sewn on myself with needle and thread, and one of them was loose. And I ripped it off and put it on his desk. I said, there, that suits you. I did that to a commander, an ex-Marine. That's a true story. Yeah. And then years later, about 5 years later, I was a staff sergeant, 4 stripes. I was living in Rabat, Morocco. And I went to a spot promotion board, and I had to get up in the morning and rent a French house. And we had no hot water in the house I was in, even though it was on a big orange plantation. And I went over there to shave in the French home, the French heater. You had to light it with a match. And I lit it, and it puffed and went out. And so I blew up in there and thought it cleared all out. And I struck a match, light again, and it shaved me. I didn't need it. When I went before that, I didn't have any eyebrows, any eyelashes. I staggered around there and got my uniform and drove 90 miles and went before this promotion board. And while I was in the little coffee shop where they was holding us to go before the board, this Marine captain that used to be my commander walked in. This is in Africa, and it was in Mississippi when I first met him. And he walked in and he said, Moody, he said, the Air Force is really messed up. He said, what are you doing here? Are you sure you're a sergeant? And if I'd have saw myself years earlier, I'd have wondered that too. And I said, I'm down here to meet the promotion board. And he said, oh, no. And I said, I'm going to be promoted today. And sure enough, I had a strategy, and that worked, and I got promoted. I made tech sergeant that day. And I walked out and I said, I told you I was going to be promoted. Yeah. And that's the last time I saw him. But that's a wild story because it has a long 6,000, 7,000 mile track behind it. Yeah. But just stuff like that. Yeah. You flew 99 missions in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you talk about the aircraft that you flew on and what you did in the folks on there? Yeah. How I got there was I went through basic electronics. It's usually a 52-week course, 8 hours a day, nothing but electronics. And then I went into radar operation. And that gave me a real advantage over radar operators that just went to radar operator school because I understood how the equipment was working and how you got your pictures on your scope and so forth and so on. So it gave me a real advantage. And when I started pursuing electronic warfare, they had a step that you could go to called anti-jamming. And I was schooled in no telling how many places and on anti-jamming techniques because we had 27 different types of radar at that time in the Air Force in the U.S. And so we'd have to train on each one because we might get stationed at any of them. But anyway, I went up through that route, and then when they came out during the Vietnam War, they screened records to find out who had the backgrounds because the system I was going into never existed before. And they wanted somebody that had a broad background in anti-jamming and jamming and up through the field of experience. And so my name came up, and they asked me if I'd volunteer, and I said yes, I did, and I did. And then I found out later that everybody in that unit was volunteers, every one of them, and they had been picked. One of them is a retired colonel right here in Las Vegas. His name is Christensen. He's got a son here that's a attorney right here in town, and he's a licensed attorney, patent attorney. And he worked up in Area 51, and he was electrical engineer up there.
Oh, wow.
And he said he kept coming up with ideas of that he couldn't get patent because the military gets a part of it if you're on active duty. And yeah.
Oh, man.
And so, but last time I talked, he didn't know who I was. I talked to him, and he had dementia or Alzheimer's. Yeah. But yeah, that's some of the. Yeah, and so we started flying. This last project was called Rivet Top, and it was super advanced. Even now, there's a lot of things that most people wouldn't have any idea, and some things I still can't talk about, but I was surprised that one of my buddies called me and told me, said, pull up Rivet Top on the internet and you can read about it. And I thought, I don't know about that because the full colonel that was working right out of the Pentagon was operating. He was our boss. And he said, when he told us last, he said, I doubt if you ever hear anything about it the rest of your life. And then when it came up on the internet, I thought, well, something going on here. And so I pulled it up and I read it, and it made a total sense from the first to the last. But there was big gaps in there that I knew that nobody else recognized. It was that smooth what they did. And there's 2 or 3 guys still living off that crew. There's only 2 of us now. But I called them and told them, pull up Rivet Top. And they couldn't find it. They'd taken it off.
Wow.
It's off right now. You can't find it.
Oh, wow. What plane was it? Was it just, how many planes were there?
We just had one, RC-121. It was a 4-engine plane. It was a Constellation is what they had for when it was a passenger plane. Super Constellation had 3 tails. And that's the way you identify it. It had 3 vertical stabilizers. And but it had 4 engines, 3350s. That's horsepower, 3,350 horsepower each.
Oh my goodness.
So that meant the plane had 17,000 horsepower, and it was about 110 feet long and very heavy. And then when we put our electronics in it, the temperature run about 130 degrees inside. Yeah.
Goodness.
And one of the things I was proud of, I never got it, but I was recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross, which is usually reserved for commissioned officers and people that are flying airplanes and fighters and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I saved a mission one time because I had made myself an air conditioner. I had a hole cut in my hat with a hose in it, went into the main air conditioning duct.
Yeah.
And I loosened my pants and everything, and I was all blown up like a frog, but I was cool. And John Necker, he's dead now. Most brilliant electronics guy I ever saw. Celebrated his 16th birthday as a merchant seaman in Naples, Italy. No formal schooling. Yet he could digest a manual that thick, just read it like I would a novel. And all records. Wow. They'd call him, they'd call him in the middle of the night and say, we got a problem. And they'd say, he'd say, well, go. He closed his eyes and he said, go to so-and-so and give me a reading. And he'd go to so-and-so and give me a reading. And after about 3 or 4 times, he'd say, your problem's in box number 42. That kind of mind he had, yeah. And he worked right up there on the range. Yeah.
You flew all 99 missions in that aircraft. And what was it? Where'd you take off?
Well, we had 3 different places. We were scheduled to go to Da Nang, and they found out about our aircraft. The enemy did, and they put out a blood jet that says whoever shoots this plane down gets a spot promotion. Everybody in the crew that shoots them down, whether it's a fighter that shoots them down, or artillery, or small arms, whoever shoots it down is going to get promoted. And our intelligence give a copy. I didn't keep one. I wish they had a bloodshed. And now, after looking back, I knew that then the CIA was feeding them, and then they was feeding us.
Oh, wow.
And because things happened that didn't make sense till I thought about it. And then I realized that was Air America that we was fooling with, and that's who they were. And but that's the way the thing came about. But we flew out of Da Nang, and then we moved to Udon in Thailand because they said it was safe. And then we got through the grapevine that they was going to use satchel bombs and sneak up and blow the airplane up on the ground there in the air base. And so they moved us to Karat. And we flew the rest of our missions out of Karat. So we moved 3 times to stay away from them after us.
My good. And you said you guys were only allowed to fly in the morning and the evening times?
Well, we could fly any time, but the strikes, the way it worked over there is there was a morning strike just after daylight, and then there was an evening strike just before dark. And we would fly up and get on the battlefield, and we'd be there when the strike came in. And that's where we saved so many lives. We had all kind of stuff we was telling them, and then we'd go back to Da Nang, which is halfway home, and we'd refuel and wait for the evening strike, and then we'd go back up and fly the evening strike, and then we'd go all the way back to Thailand. And
you said you remember on the runway you would sit there and you watch.
Oh, yeah.
Is it the F4?
No, it was the 105s.
And you said you remember them, and there was a priest on the runway.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story?
Absolutely. The first time we landed there, we flew a mission. It would have been a morning mission, and then at that time it had been both mission, morning and afternoon. But we flew home, and but every night or every morning when they would go out to take off, when we landed there the first time, I counted 82 F-105s on the ramp there, 82 of them. And about 6 months later, I counted them, and there was 50-something. And that's how many was shot down, and that's not counting the ones lost that was replaced. And I said every morning when they'd come up there lined up, loaded, the wings are just drooping with bombs and fuel, and they would come up there and have to light the afterburner to get it to move.
Wow.
And they would move up, and there's a chaplain standing there with a white robe on with a purple scarf, and when they'd light the burners and come up about 20, 30 feet there and hit the brakes, the plane would just bow because of the weight. And when they would taxi forward, the tires would squeal on a dry runway. Even loaded, they'd just be half flat, and they'd have to light the burner to get the thing to go. And every one of them stopped, and he prayed for them every time. And I said, well, obviously there was no atheists flying them airplanes.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I said, they also didn't ask if he was Protestant or Catholic, or they didn't care, man. I need whatever you can help me with.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, when you see that, and you know that, because we saw them when they came back lots of times, because the day I didn't fly, we'd see the fight, the morning strike come back and the evening strike. And a lot of times they would join up in the formations of 4 to make the trip north, and they would climb out, and they'd burn up so much fuel getting up there to 15,000 feet, the tankers would top them off right there where they took off, and then they'd go north, and they'd come back and have to meet them to get them back home to fuel them again. Wow. And I said that when you saw those guys taxi up there at night, and lights flashing and everything happening, and they're smart as they were. They'd trained all their lives to be these pilots. And they'd taxi up there, and that guy would give them a cross. They knew we got 3 friends or 4 friends right here in this flight. Some of us not coming back today.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I saw them come back 1. Means 3 were shot down. I saw them come back in 2. And I saw one come back one day, and when you'd flown 100 missions, which was rare that you could make it, and this guy had flown 100 missions, and they give him a clearance to do acrobatics over the field. And we watched him crash and kill himself after 100 missions. He came in and stood that 105 on his tail, and the thing blew up, and it fell back on his tail like that and crashed and went all over. And everybody was there with a little trailer behind with a big old teddy bear on it and a cooler full of beer to celebrate his 100th mission.
Wow,
and they didn't know where to go. They just kind of hid out behind the barracks and went back I watched that happen, and I said, you watch that, and if you can appreciate what they do for you, you hadn't got a heart. You hadn't got much of a mind, and that's my opinion. Yeah, I said, I see these people running in the streets committing crimes and totally unlawful and everything they think and do, and I said they needed to see that.
Yeah.
And they'll realize somebody's paid for your freedom to do that.
Yeah.
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 And
Bob, you told a story one time when I think it was on an Air Force base that it got bombed or it got.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was it. That was at Karat, the last base we were.
Yeah.
When I was driving a Jeep and I pull up to we call it a hooch. It's a big barracks with individual quarters. Mine was individual, and I came up there in a Jeep and started to jump across a ditch. It's about 2 or 3 feet deep and about 2 or 3 feet deep wide. And while I was in the air, there was an explosion, and it caught me in the air, and it made me horizontal. That's how much the blast was from it. And I hit flat. I jumped the ditch, but I hit flat on the ground, and when I did, I turned over on my stomach to see where it came from, and I could see this mushroom cloud going up. And I thought, we've been nuked. That's what it looked just like it. It was rolling like this as it went up. And come to find out, they was bringing bombs in they call it a train. It's rubber tired, but they have these big 750 and 1,000-pound bombs on it, taking it to put on the airplane. It'd be like a trailer of 10, 15 of them. And one of those bombs went off, and it killed several people. I never found out how many. It killed several people that was around the thing. And and they was taking the bombs to put them on the aircraft. Yeah, but
Oh man.
Yeah, and I remember after I saw the big mushroom cloud going up, I turned around and looked across the base, and there was still enough concussion, probably second and third waves concussion, I don't know. But I saw a tank they was building, a water tank using bamboo for scaffolding, up 80 feet on bamboo, and I saw that tank rock. It never failed. Wow. But it rocked with all that scaffolding. I thought that sucker's coming down. Yeah. But they told me the story after that later. After they got ready to drain it and clean it, the tank, it was round. And they carried a guy and lifted him with a twin-rotor helicopter and let him down in the tank. And he was to clean the tank, and they had about knee-deep with water in there, and he scrubbed around and told them to clean it. It carried him around and broke his legs and his arms and around the whirlpool did. Almost killed him. And then I watched them take a helicopter and fly up there and bring him out on a stretcher while they hovered over that hole to get him out of there.
Oh my goodness!
I watched them take him to the hospital, and they said he recovered, or he survived. But
when you were flying, what was the aircraft called again?
RC-121.
When you were flying in there, can you talk a little bit about? I don't know if you can or not. What you did what the radar did and what was capable of.
Well, I can tell you that I was working electronic warfare, and I was locating enemy radars and mainly missile sites, SAM-3s, surface-to-air missiles, and they was rated SAM-1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 9s, on up. 9s were the shoulder-fired and so forth. I didn't fool with them much, but mine was the SAM-3s. And I would locate them, and then we could pass that information on to an aircraft that would lock the guided bomb to where the antenna was. And I could sit there and watch I'd copy all the information off of them, the power and the frequency and average power, max power, all the fingerprints of electronics. And then we'd pass what was interesting or usable to the fighter pilot, and he'd lock on the back seater would, called a wild weasel. And they had the right name. Those guys were weasels because they're supposed to be sly, and so that's why they call them weasels. Yeah. And they would lock that thing on, and I'd be sitting there watching the transmitter, and they'd launch that thing, and I'd hear bingo, and it'd disappear. And I'd say, yeah, they got him. Yeah. And then one time I came back, and I had to report all the stuff I got, and I reported to the TOC, it's a headquarters where they planned all the missions, and I was in there one day looking because I would report stuff, and it would go up to Japan, and the experts, so to speak, second lieutenants mostly, with degrees in electrical engineering but no experience. And it would come back about 2 or 3 days later, and in the meantime, these people getting shot down unnecessarily because the current data wasn't getting to the pilots, and I was in there looking around to see how far behind me they were. and they was 4 of them, F-4 pilots, and I was walking around with them, and everybody that went in there had to have a secret, above top secret, and I said, "That's not there." And they said, "What do you mean? Who are you?" I said, "I'm the guy that copied the debt. I'm the guy that copied the debt." And they said, "Oh my, come with us." and they followed me around like a little puppy.
Yeah.
And I said, "You can go there, but you can't go." I said, "This is 24 hours old." And I said, "What you're getting is 3 days old." And I said, that's how the system worked and how bad that was, how solid that was. And the pilots didn't know probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever get shot at when you were in that aircraft? Did you have you had an interesting story with some pilots that almost.
About the MiG-21s. We was flying on a Sunday, and it was in Tonkin Gulf, right out of the mouth of the Yellow River, and nothing was happening. They didn't fly strikes on Sundays usually. And so we're just sitting up there fat, dumb, and happy, and had our parachute harness on, and all the parachutes was hanging on a rod. And then if we had to have them, all we had to do was just snap them, and they'd hook right in. That's how quick you get them on. And we was having a good Sunday up there, and 2 Navy Phantoms was our escorts, and they were sitting there about 220 knots, as slow as they could fly. And we were flying about as fast as we could go to help them out. And they was playing games with us, and we was flying, and nothing was happening. And I remember that day, one of them came by upside down. One of the Navy guys come up upside down, and he, playing games like all young people do. He's probably in their 20s.
Yeah.
But anyway, all of a sudden, somebody keyed the intercom and said, "MiGs, MiGs, MiGs." Well, the pilot was sitting there, and when he heard MiGs, 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 he's a sharp guy. And all of us were handpicked, so he was a super pilot to start with. They wouldn't have had him in that project. And when they hollered MiGs, 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 he dropped the gear and the brakes and the flaps. And before we could get our parachutes on, we was in a spiral down towards the ocean like this. And we was off the ceilings hitting equipment. One guy tore the whole crotch out of his pants.
Oh, my God.
And it's Tom Terrell, and he's still alive. There's only 2 of us left, and I talk to him weekly. But tell you what kind of guy he is. He was deer hunting last year by himself in Florida. And he went away from home on an ATV and went up into a deer stand and fell out and broke his back. He crawled with a broken back from where he hit the ground and got to his ATV, and he said it took him an hour to get up on the ATV, and he rode that sucker home with a broken back.
Goodness.
And I couldn't get him on the phone, and I kept worrying about him, and I finally got hold of one of his daughters on the internet, and I said, "What's wrong with Tom's phone? He don't answer his phone." And she said, "He's in the bed." And I said, "What happened?" She said, "He broke his back." Yeah. But I'll tell you about the MiG-21s, and then I'll tell you the related story. But anyway, when they hollered MiGs, 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 the pilot went into this spin to get us away, and he saw the 2 MiGs go by. And the way that the transmission was, they said when the transmission was made in Chinese, so we knew they were Chinese pilots, they said, "There's our target at 7,000 meters." Well, we was at 15,000 feet, which is roughly 7,000 meters. So the pilot didn't need any time. He just calculated, that's us. And so we went in this spiral, and he wasn't worried about us flopping around back up like a bunch of fish. Yeah. He was flying that airplane to the deck, and they said he pulled out about 400 feet because he's afraid those MiGs would come on down. And we was right over hidden, and was a Navy aircraft carrier about 12 miles away. And our pilot headed straight for that carrier, full speed, because he knew the Navy wouldn't let any MiGs get close to that carrier, so he was using them for our protection. And the captain of that carrier got on guard channel and said, "Get away from my carrier." And I guess he answered, "The hell you say?" And then I read in the local newspapers, a lot of times there's an English newspaper out of Bangkok, and sometimes you get some tidbits of what was going on, not all the details, but enough that you could put it together. And that never showed up. The Navy put a crush to it. They didn't want nobody to know that somebody had. We flew over that carrier with that damn big airplane.
Man.
But
and it was Chinese pilots, huh?
Yeah, and we tracked one of them, went to Hainan Island, which is straight across the Chinese Gulf, and the other one went back to China. He was still flying airborne when he went back into China, so we knew they're speaking Chinese, and we had 28 linguists on our plane that spoke about 30 languages.
Wow.
And so. Anything that was said, we got it, and it saved us, saved our lives. We'd have never knew what hit us if they'd have launched their rockets. When they pitched up and said, "There's our target," if they'd have launched them right then, they would have got us. But they never launched them. because we was coming down and they wasn't expecting it, and they was going up. And the pilot told us later, we saw them go by. Yeah, we saw them go by, but said we lost contact with them, and they got out of there because those Phantoms that was guarding us was going so slow that they couldn't even engage the MiGs, because by the time they got up to speed, they was 100, 200 miles away. Yeah, but that was a scary day.
How long were you how many hours were you in the air in the morning and at night?
We two missions a day, probably about total of about 13 hours each day.
Each day?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was dangerous, very dangerous getting to and from the battlefield. When we left out of Thailand, we had to cross the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we couldn't be but about 14,000 feet. We were so heavy that we couldn't climb. And so when we'd fly there, lucky enough, we could locate the guns. And we would tell the pilots, and our pilot would fix it, well, we can fly between these two guns and we're out of range. And then a few weeks later, they said, well, it's getting a little bit tighter. And I said, okay, we'll just fly over one gun. Yeah. And that's the way we go to work. And then when we get almost to the shore over there, we'd fly over a place called Monkey Mountain, and it had an artillery base operated by the Marines. And they was fighting going all around there. And so we would fly into their area. We'd have to call and ask permission to go through their area because they was firing artillery shells, as the troopers was calling for artillery. And we'd see the shells come by our plane. I've seen them come right by. You can see the color of them as they came by. And we'd be flying by, and they'd give us clearance to come through their area. They'd say, come in on a 30 degrees and go out on a certain degrees. And we'd be right in the middle of it, and they'd start firing in every direction because they came first. The Marines came first, and hell, here we are up there like, well, where are we going? Yeah, and that happened about every day.
How you said you had a doctor that was specifically for your aircraft.
Yeah, he was assigned to us full time, and amphetamines, that's what we call them, speed, that's what they were. And he issued those to keep us alert. After that first mission in the morning, you were so exhausted, and with the temperature being about 130 degrees, that in the afternoon and second mission, by the time you got to bed, you was out of it, man, just beat up, exhausted physically and mentally. And they would issue speed tablets. And
like methamphetamines.
Yeah, and we take them. And in fact, I was in charge of metering them out. They had to come to me to get them, and I had to keep a record.
Log,
And the doctor would come and see me about once a week and say, let me see your book. And I'd give it to him, and he'd go through there, and he'd mark one out. And he'd say, oh, okay, and mark this one out. He'd watched and seen how many they'd taken. And he said, no, I'm not going to let them get addicted. So he just take them off the list, which makes total sense. And they told us, and I went to several survival schools, but anyway, one of them, they told us, they said, if you get on the ground in North Vietnam and get shot down and you're lucky enough to get on the ground, they said, you got them combat boots with them big cleats in them. And he said, they're running in tennis shoes. Your enemy's after you in tennis shoes. And he said, you pop one of them damn pills and you'll outrun him. That's what he said. He said, if your heart will stand it, you'll outrun him.
That's incredible that you're giving out methamphetamines. Yeah, I bet you a lot of pilots just stay awake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then when we get back, sometimes I had to fly double missions. I had to fly two days in a row because the other guys, only two of us. So he'd get sick, and then I'd have to fly his missions and my missions.
Yeah.
And when as soon as we get to debriefing, I'd start taking sleeping pills while we're still in the debriefing.
So you could go to sleep.
And if you don't think it motivates you, we'd be there after returning from a mission sometimes and go to the other crews, their debriefings. And you see pilots come in wet with sweat, still in their flight gear, and just came back from combat. And they'd come into our debriefing and wouldn't be saying a thing, just sitting there. And when they had a chance, they'd raise their hand and said, who made that comment? And some guy would raise their hand and say, that was me. And they'd go up and give him a hug, not real often. He said, you saved my life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, if that doesn't...
Where is your plane? Where's that plane now, Bob?
It's in the museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Okay. Have you been there?
No, I've been to Wright-Pat, but not since that plane's up there. And the way I found out about it was Tom Terrell, my buddy, was up there traveling, and he went to Wright-Pat, and he saw the plane as they driving by, and he went out to look at it. And he said they had a guard on it and wouldn't let anybody go. He's guarding several there. And Tom walked to the guy and said, I need to look in the door of that airplane. And he said, well, it's prohibited. He said, I don't want to go in the airplane. I just want to look inside the door. And he let him go up the stairs and look inside the door, and Tom came back. And he said, yeah, that tail number is not the same one, but that's the same airplane. And then he called me and told me, he said, I found the old gal.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we flew over 200 missions with it. Set an all-time record.
Wow.
With number takeoffs without an abort, over 200. Wow. And I was in an argument with some Australians the other day on Facebook, because they'd handle that aircraft, not ours, but Super Constellations as civilians. And they said it's a bad engine. And I came back with them, and I said, I don't think I would call it bad. We flew it 200 missions without an abort. I said, I would call it maintenance problems. I put them down. They couldn't argue with that.
Oh, man.
And I said, but why not? You got hand-picked crews. Everybody was hand-picked, all the maintenance people, even the tire people, everybody. And I said, and you got presidential priority, too, on the parts. You can go over and take a part off another airplane that don't even belong to you and put it on yours. Yeah, and we did that.
Yeah?
Yeah, I sent our guys over one time. They was putting an engine on a College Eye, same aircraft, just a different mission. And they had it in a stand ready to put it on, and they went over and said, I want that. And the guy said, well, no, we think put it on the airplane. He said, no, you're not either. In fact, took their truck and brought it over and put it on the airplane. Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, so if you can't set a record with that support, you know.
Absolutely.
I said, it's not the engines.
When you how long were you in the Air Force, Bob?
28 years.
And when you retired, can you talk about a little bit what you did after that and what came of that?
Yeah, well, I came back to Nellis, and they was running an electronic warfare range up in Tonopah called Red Flag. And I think most people can still pull that up and see what they do. They duplicated the airfields around the world and the radars around the world, and the guys could come here for 2 weeks and fly against it and get all the experience they need, because if you can survive the first 10 missions, you're pretty safe. And that's what they come here for, Red Flag. And I was in charge of that 3 days a week. And we had about 330 people on that project. Had 3 motels leased in town, and we had 2 Greyhound buses that we drove ourselves that left Nellis, and went to Tonopah every Sunday. And they'd come back on Friday night. And But I was real familiar with it, and that's one of the reasons they signed me to that job, because I'd flown against all these radars that they'd mocked up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you had all your background in electronics and radar, and so can you talk about how did you find out about that job? Is there anything that you can talk about there?
Yeah. What it was that I kept up with it, and when I got ready for a new assignment, I would look and see what was open. And so as soon as I put in for the assignment at Nellis, they looked at my background, and when they saw my background, they said, "Yeah, we want him here." And so I came. I used that many times in my career, and But yeah, that's basically how. And I was up there. I don't know how many months, but.
Can you talk about the hiring process at all? Is that you want to?
Well,
really. Yeah.
I didn't know, except I don't know how they hired the civilians, but I knew how I got my job, and I was going to get out of the Air Force and retire at Nellis, and Ford Aerospace was going to bid off that contract. It's always been military. But there's a federal law, I understand, that says if it can be done by civilians, you have to put it up for bids.
Okay.
And so I applied for that law, and when they looked for that project, they said, yeah, this is the guy we want. And I thought, well, I got my foot right in the door. I'm going right there. And I went there, and then they hired me later on, Ford Aerospace, to run that range up there. And I ran it 3 days a week, and then the colonel came up and ran it. But after that, it was just all civilians. But they wanted me to be unfair to the workers and to the Air Force. And I said, you got the wrong guy.
Yeah.
I said, my allegiance to our country and then the Air Force.
Yeah.
And I said, bring me somebody down here from Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. That's where the headquarters was. I said, I want to give them a debrief.
Yeah.
So they brought 4 or 5 people down, and I gave them a 41-minute debrief. And when I got through, I said, please don't interrupt me. And when I finish, I'll answer your question. And when I finished, I said, any question with no questions. I said, I must have covered it pretty well. And when I walked out, the guy in charge from Fort Aerospace came down and said, I'll give you 2 promotions if you'll stay on. I said, did you hear me talk about money? And he said, no. I said, did you hear me mention ethics? And he said, yeah. I said, how many times? And he couldn't know. And I said, probably about 10 or 15 times, because that's the reason I'm leaving. You have no ethics, and I don't work that way.
Yeah.
And I walked out of there, and he came back out there because they kept that contract, and he kept coming out there. And every time he'd come, he'd call me, and he'd come pick me up, and we'd go somewhere and eat or something. And he'd say, that's still open.
Yeah.
And I said, have you changed? And he'd look sad and say, no, I guess not. And I said, I'm not interested. That's a true story.
Oh, man.
And then I went to work for that security outfit that was providing the security for the 117 program, really.
Yeah.
And I wasn't involved in it except security. I was on the SWAT team. I think we had 70 members on our SWAT team. Yeah, that's a big SWAT team. And the FBI came down and challenged us one time. We kicked them so bad they stopped the exercise.
Are you serious?
And started it over.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've had a tremendous career. I sure have.
How long were you on the range? Did you work up there?
Probably less than 2 years, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And did you during that time you had some really interesting stories about? Is there anything that you can talk about, something you saw up there or anything like that? Or,
well, yeah, there's things that I saw up there that I don't recognize and so forth and so on, and things without clearance from somebody, I couldn't talk about. Yeah. But the most interesting part was that with my background, I was so fortunate to have so much experience in so many areas of electronics that I thought I could figure out what I was watching at. I just garden it, but I had no idea. I still don't. Some of the stuff I saw, I just thought, well, what the hell was it? Really, and it still bothers me.
Yeah.
But eventually, occasionally, I'll see something come up years later. I mean, like just recently, they came up with the B2, the new one. The new version is a smaller version of the B2.
Okay, yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, I said, oh, yeah. I remember the first time I saw it, where I was. It was at night. It flew over the top of my car, and that was it. But
wow.
I've been down in Mississippi 15 years. It was before that. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. And I said, that's what I saw. And then there's a bunch of things I'd like to know about, but, of course, I'll never know.
Yeah.
But, it was very, very enlightening.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. And you would, you drove up there a lot, huh?
Yeah. I drove up most of the time because I was in charge and I needed to be with the guys. We carried all of our food up there for a week, and we had a huge kitchen in one of those motels, and we cooked our own foods up there, and it was 312 of us. And they did some cooking. They were good at it, And then we'd leave in the morning, like at 4 o'clock, to go to the range before daylight, and with 2 buses, and then all the vehicles, had 93 vehicles, military vehicles in my outfit.
Yeah.
And it'd be just a convoy of all kind of vehicles and private cars and buses and the whole bit. And we'd go out there and operate for a day, and we'd do that. And I think it was Thursday that the colonel would fly up, and I'd brief him on what had happened Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and he would stay Thursday and Friday, and then he'd fly back to Nellis, and I'd go home.
You told me you had an interesting story with a coyote one time.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out near Malone Airstrip, and there's where there was just an asphalt runway with a little old, they said it was a control tower, looked like an outdoor toilet. And they called me to headquarters one day and said, there's somebody over here that wants you to take him to Milan Airstrip. He wants to look at it. I went over there. It was Tennessee Ernie Ford. He was a instructor pilot during the Second World War, B-17s. And he said, I landed there many times on that little field, and that he wanted me to carry him over there. And he was very famous, in the music industry for years. And but yeah, that's what went on over there. And
did the coyote?
Yeah. Let me get back to that.
Yeah.
I went out to inspect this place one night, and when I got out, it was in the summer, and when I got out of a truck, my patrol vehicle, my naked arm was showing out of my sleeve. And that coyote, I didn't see her. And when I reached for my left arm to open the door, for the driver's side, because I probably had a big weapon with me, and that coyote jumped through the air and caught me right here on this arm from behind. Well, what do you think? I thought somebody was attacking me. So I made a big swirl and came out with my sidearm and was going to zero down on who it was, and here this coyote sitting there looking at me. And I said, "What is this?" And I looked down, my arm was bleeding. I still got 4 marks on there where she bit me. And I was afraid to try her with that pistol because I'm not a great pistol shot. And I was afraid I'd miss, and then I'd have to take a series of shots. And so I called headquarters, and I said, "Is Kaminsky over there?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Tell him to come over here and bring a rifle." And he was an Air Force champion rifleman. I said, send him only.
You called the right guy?
Yeah, he still lives in Tonopah, still works. He's retired up there. But anyway, he come driving up, and I called him, and I said, "Come in with your lights off." And he had night vision goggles and everything. And I said, "Come in from downwind." I didn't want that coyote to know he was coming. And I said, I'll guide you into where I am. And I did. And he came up, and I said, "Be sure you don't shoot her in the head." I said, "We got to have her brain to do the test on." And he shot that thing through the heart, and she just went right down. And while he was gone, she would start to leave. And I'd whistle, and she'd stop and sit down and turn around, look and try to see where it was come from. And then a minute or two later, she'd start leaving again, and I'd whistle, and I did that. And I was holding her back until Don got there. And when he got there, I was 200 yards from where it started. But I was still entertaining her. Mm-hmm. And he came up there and shot her, and we went out to a salvage yard and got a refrigerator and went up and filled it full of ice and put her in there and covered her up. The state troopers took her up and took her to Carson City. And about a week later, they called and said, "She's clean." Yeah. And I said, "Well, I know what's going on." I said, "Those Air Force guys out there," I was out of the Air Force that time, but I knew most of them. I said, they thought they'd been feeding her loaf bread out of the dining hall, and that coyote saw my white arm and thought, "This is food." Yeah. And so she jumped and nailed my arm, and I know how that works. They they watch your eyes, and she tried to watch me and grab that bread at the same time, and she missed. So we had to put out the word, "No more feeding the coyotes."
You told me a story one time where there were a lot of old gold mines there when the military grabbed took that land down. And,
Absolutely.
And that haven't been either explored or
Milan Mountain was one of them. That's right, with that Milan airstrip I was telling you about. Right in the middle of the desert there was a big peak mountain, and it had a vertical mine out there. And when I was still on active duty, my guys are all over that place, and 315 of them, roughly 330. And they got to going down in those mines on those ladders that had been there since the 1800s. Oh. And they was finding all kinds of tools that they had left there. And they was bringing them out. And then when I found out about it, I told the lieutenant, and he was had a degree in solar engineering out of the Air Force Academy, and his brothers were both mining engineers, safety mining, one for gold mining and one for gold mining, or coal mining. And I told him, and he just had a fit. He said, "They don't know that methane gas is going to kill them down in there because you can't smell it." And he says it's heavier, and it'll just go low, and you won't know it till you walk into it, and you're gone. Yeah. And so we had to stop them from doing it. But they was bringing wheelbarrows out, all kind of stuff from that. And then I found out the story that when they occupied that range, everybody that was mining on it had to leave, which made sense. But this guy was getting such rich ore that he was coming in at night and staying in that mine for days and days and then packing it out on his back.
After the military took down the test range.
That's the story they told us. And
oh man, he would just sneak in there.
Yeah, and it had to be pretty rich. You can't carry on your back enough ore that'd be worth unless it was rich. Yeah. Oh yeah. Man. Yeah.
And you said you stayed the night in Tonopah a lot. Did you ever stay in the that circus? What was the motel up there? The clown motel.
No, the Mizpah.
Oh, is that what it was called?
Yeah, that's the one that the boxers came during the gold rush and boxed up there. Some of the old boxers. Yeah. Oh man. Oh yeah. But I knew a lot of people up there, and I got a lot of artifacts that came from up there. And I remember one, Luella Kane was a nurse, and she nursed one of the presidents of the United States, was a private nurse.
Yeah.
And she went through the San Francisco earthquake, and she had a leaden lamp, and it was bent. And I said, how'd that get bent? And she said, during the San Francisco earthquake, I said, I was there. Yeah.
Oh,
And her
man.
kids, they were all educated and
Yeah.
had good jobs, and they weren't even interested. And half of the stuff in that museum, she donated.
Oh, wow.
That's a fact, yeah. I'll tell you one more story about that you'd appreciate. There was a guy named Roger Grophy that I worked with on the SWAT team, and everybody said he was dumb because he was dyslexic, but he wasn't dumb at all.
Yep.
And after I left up there, I used to take him over to Luella Kane's house at night, and she would show us all kinds of old stuff that she had through the family. And she said, after I left, she told Roger, she said, I want you to come over here and bury something under my house. And he went over there, and he said it was a coffee can older than he'd ever seen. And he said it was half full of gold, melted down gold coins. And she said, I want you to bury this for me. And he said, and he was a carpenter, a good one. And he took a slat out of the floor.
Yeah.
And buried it and put it back in. You couldn't. He said no one could ever see it had been moved, and he buried it there. Then he left here and bought a marina in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And got ripped out of all of his money. And he went to work for the bank, and he just retired from the bank down there as a security guard. But anyway, he said that I believe that that gold is still in that bucket of that house because she died.
Where's this house at?
It's in Tonopah, yeah.
Oh, man, really? Oh, wow.
And I said, I could find her house. It's probably been bulldozer, who knows?
Yeah.
But that's still probably there.
Wow. My goodness.
And I was that close to it. And but
there was one bar there, right? In Tonopah? Was there a few restaurants at the time, or was it,
The Mizpah was the biggest one there. That was the old hotel, and it's a casino as well.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
but I met some real characters there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's just the way it is everywhere you go. If you look around and you're open-minded, you'll find out some true stories. And
about people.
That's like my Grant, my nephew down in Mississippi. He's got 800 pages of interviews with old people. I'm talking about started when he was 16 and he's 60-something. And he's got all of those.
Yeah. And
he told me if I die, and this is not published, he said it's lost to history. Nobody will have it. I'm the only one that's got all this.
Yeah.
And
you said, Bob, you had a story one time when you were living in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
You said he was a guy that wore many hats.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give a little background on him and how you met him?
I was living on the Cebu River in Morocco, and a guy came to the barbershop. There's a Algerian barbershop. I was getting a haircut there, and he came in and said, I need to talk to the guy inside, the American. And I said, tell him to come in. And the guy said, oh, he's bashful. He's young, and he's bashful, and he just wait outside. And I walked outside, and this guy named Abdullah Wahad Zahiri had just, he was selected by the Moroccan government when he was 9 years old to become the Secretary of Defense or whatever job they had for him. And when he came to the States, he married a girl from Dodge City, Kansas, from wheat farms, and him being Muslim and her being Christian. And when he came back to Morocco, he knew he was lined up to be the Secretary of Education for the country. And so we became lifelong friends. And in fact, they came to visit us before Joe died about 4 years ago. They came to Mississippi to visit us. And they still live. But his daddy was the Qaid of Microbel Qasir, the town we lived in on the river. And that meant he was the mayor, chief of police, the judge. 7 hats he wore.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I was holding Kim by the hand one time, your mama, and we was on the street in a Navy town in Port Leote, Morocco, and a truck driver come driving by, and he saw that I was an American, and Kim tried to run, and I was holding her by the hand, and she couldn't get in the street, but he saw what happened, and he locked the brakes of his truck and came to a stop, and he gets out, and he's cursing me, calling me a dealer muck, which is an SOB, and he was screaming at me, and he didn't know that my buddy Dale was standing there listening to it.
Yeah.
And after he really, I don't know what he said, but I heard D-Lo Muck. But anyway, Dale took out a card and showed it to him, and the guy went, just to attention. And Dale walked around him real slow talking. We couldn't even understand what he was saying. The guy couldn't hardly get back in his truck. He was physically shaken when he got back in his truck, and he drove off. And I said, Dale, what the hell did you show him? And he said, well, in this country, they give you a card based on what family you're from, the kind of education you got. And he said, that's represented on that card. And he said, when I showed him that card, that's why it frightened him so bad. I probably could have had him hauled off forever. And I said, well, it's glad to know you got a card like that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
But he came to visit us, and I travel with him all the time in Morocco, and he advised me on everything because I'd ask him how I handle this. Mm-hmm. And I wanted the jalaba, and I wasn't making any money. And they're expensive. It's hand-woven wool. And he said, go out to the market when they come on Wednesday, set up their tents, and he said, go pick out the one you want. And he said, take all of the Moroccan money and put it in the smallest denominations, so it looks like a big stack. And he said, you figure out what you want to pay for it. And he said, make that about 40% of what it normally sells for. And he said, just for the rain you see coming, he said, you go up there and shake it in his face. And he said, you'll buy it. I gave it to Kim. She's got that jalaba, your mother.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but that was some of the experience. I'll tell you one more. It was funny. I went to all kind of places. I just go anywhere. And even today, I run into people from Morocco, and I said, yeah, I've been up to this place. That, oh, come on. And I said, yeah, man, I've been there. And I started telling them about it, and they said, well, why would you go now? I said, I hadn't seen it before. I just wanted to see. But we went into Roman ruins that I don't imagine any Americans had hardly ever been in, and the mosaics in the bathrooms were still intact, perfect, and stuff like that, But,
man.
Yeah, it was really a treat to meet somebody that was educated and had grown up in that country.
You spent some time in Germany as well.
Yes, 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place that you've lived, or they all have their own kind of unique?
Well, each country-wise, I think if I was going to choose a country in Europe, it would be Holland.
Okay.
Like Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Because not the country, it's the people.
Yeah.
They're sweet and kind and understanding and not crazy for grabbing cash. Mm-hmm. After the Labor Day, everything shuts down.
Yeah.
And so you stay after Labor Day. They're still running all the concessions and everything, but you have no waiting.
Yeah.
And so we traveled, and people advise us that live there. We spend a lot of time with. And but yeah, I love Germany, and the reason mainly is the people are. My wife, Joy, your grandmother's part German. The Crumbs, mm-hmm. that was German, Krumm, and but. They're just pretty rigid.
Yeah.
In their ways. You'll run across it. 2 or 3 generations later, you run into a German. I know it right away. Yeah. And I appreciate it because it's all organized.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go speeding over there, they ain't going to send you no ticket. Yeah. They're going to take a photograph of you, and when you get the photograph of you, shows your license plate and the date and time and the light that was red, and you're sitting there or you've driven across it.
Oh, you're guilty.
They just send you a ticket.
Yeah.
And you go to any post office to pay it.
Yeah.
And if you don't come pay it, they'll come get your car. You'll pay it.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
but I like that. I like that organization.
Yeah.
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 Structured.
Yeah.
And that's the reason they're so efficient in war materials when they're fighting and all that kind of stuff. They couldn't produce with us because we had more natural resources and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
you had a very interesting story. Gio was showing me some photos of I think one of his favorite aircraft, which is the Blackbird. Mm-hmm. And when we were in the Cold War, you said you remember watching that thing take off out of Florida,
England, Louisiana.
Yeah, can you talk about where you were flying? And
Well, what was happening,
Yeah.
that I was at the SAGE headquarters called the Semi-Automatic Ground and Fireman System, SAGE. And we controlled all the air defense for the southeast United States, and there was one up north that covers northeast, so there's about 4 that covered everything in the country. And then offshore, the AWACS aircraft that I was a crew chief on, we furnished the data to those from offshore into those computers. And so a guy could sit in one place and follow an aircraft from the East Coast. Now they could fly them all the way across the country, but those days just 200, 300, 400 miles. But that's the system that all tied together now.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And you guys you'd fly around during the Cold War, just monitoring every day?
What we do there was, I'll give you an example of it, is when we was perfecting our equipment, we flew Cuba out of Eglin Air Force Base, because that was where the air war operations all came out of. And the Navy would send up escorts, F-4 Phantoms usually, and they would escort us around the borders like 3 miles offshore. You could see the cars running up and down the highway in Cuba. And I would be operating, getting all this electronic data. And the MiGs coming from Russia, they'd be sitting on the other side, making sure we didn't come any closer. And here we are lumbering along that big old airplane, copying all that data.
Oh, okay.
And not only was we getting that, we was copying anything spoken. I don't care what it was.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
one time we flew a mission down there, and just after we got off, one of our guys hung his toe and run into a console and knocked himself out. And in my operation, if you've ever been knocked out, you're out. Your security clearance is gone right there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. And he hit this console, knocked him out. And we dumped fuel and declared a medical emergency, because we didn't know who he was going, how bad he was. We didn't have a medic. And we came back and landed, and when we landed, the doctor and a couple of medics came up, and they had the old push-type ramps, and you'd push it up and then run up the steps. They started running up there, and the doctor was, and a little guy looked like he was about 17 years old. I'm sure he was older than that. Had a 45, and he put it right in his face and said, "Please stop, I'll kill you. Don't come up here." And the guy said, "Oh, my God," said, "that guy may be dying." And he said, "There's going to be one dying here. Don't come no closer." That's what he told him. And we all saw it and heard it,
Oh, because they didn't want him to know and write that up.
Right, absolutely.
To save his security clearance.
So he said, "Bring him down." And the guy had come to by then, and we tried to deny that he'd ever been knocked out. In fact, we got by with it. Because we never did tell him that he was knocked out, because that'd void his clearance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And, but that...
And did you see the Blackbirds take off, Bob, and run a mission? Or
I would follow them on radar.
Yeah.
But they'd take off early mornings, the only time they could do it, and they would fly down to about Mobile and hit the coastline, and then they'd follow the curvature of Florida down. And by the time they went off to Key West, they was going 3,000 miles an hour. And the reason, and they couldn't climb up there. They didn't have time. And they'd fly over it and photograph it and fly on off and come back around the other end, the west end, and come back into Louisiana. But I was following them there one night, and this guy, what it was, I'll tell you how it works. When the ocean is blowing the breeze in from out the deep ocean, blows a breeze, it's on shore at night. Mm-hmm. And then in the morning, it's usually the other way. And it makes pushes the hot air up. When the breeze hits the land, it causes it to push the air up. And when you get hot air up above where it should be hot air, it reflects just like the return of an aircraft. All the beams reflect.
Wow.
And so they would go down, and they could lock onto that they call it AP, anomalous propagation. And they'd lock onto it and follow it all the way around and down to the tip. By the time they got there, they was burning. And then they'd scramble, but they couldn't get up there in time, and they'd go on and come back around. But I was working one day at Montgomery, Alabama, in the Sage Center, and I recorded. My job was all the inputs coming from about 20 radars came into our main computer, and it was all vacuum computer, had over 1 million tubes in it. Oh, my God. And we took all that data, and sometimes it was so overloaded with data that somebody had to decide what data you're going to shut off and what data you're going to let come through, and that was one of my jobs. And I'd call guys on the radar sites, and I'd tell them to change their frequencies or change their receivers or whatever and cut them down.
Yeah.
But that was a heck of a job. But anyway, a U-2 was making that trip one time down there, and the guy passed out, and he died in the cockpit, and the aircraft was on autopilot. And it just went on south. Instead of, after it went across two-way, it just kept going south. And a guy, we called him the White Fox, he was silver-haired, he was from Texas, a colonel, and he called me in, he said, "You got all the data on this guy?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, can you take it off that big drum and put it on a small drum? He said, the Pentagon's standing by wanting it. And I said, yeah, it'll take me a few minutes. So I transferred it off a big recorder drum and put it on a small one. And they flew that sucker up to Washington so they could see it. But what had happened is he'd lost his oxygen and he died, and the plane was on autopilot, and he just kept going south. And I tell you how accurate this was years ago. They'd reckoned where he would go down. And when the thing flamed out, it glided and stayed upright and landed in the jungles in Colombia.
Oh,
and they found it within hours.
Wow.
That's how close they had with the weather and the drift and everything involved, and the airplane and all. They went down there and flew over it, and there it was. Of course, it was silver on top in a green jungle, and they saw it and said, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a wild day there. But that stuff happened more often than you could believe, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to squeeze one story out of you, Bob, before we end the podcast here. But I wanted to, you said you were flying in Vietnam, and you had on your radar, you saw some anomalous, I don't know, aircraft way up high.
Mm.
Do you remember that? Can you talk about that at all, or is that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, that's I tried at least, you know. Totally fine with me.
Well, sometimes I can, and sometimes if I've seen it come out on the internet or something, then I feel pretty free. But there's things that I would have to ask before. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, I totally understand that.
But yeah, that's just a synopsis of what some of the things I had been involved in. But I guess the most interesting part of it was meeting people that was so much smarter than I was.
Yeah.
That they just fascinated me that they could do these things and think.
Yeah.
Above even when we thought we was the top of it.
There's some people,
and we found out that they told us you're going to do this and this and this, and we said, bull crap, who's this? Even people with, advanced degrees, and they said, no way. And I said, no, you found out they had blinders on when they got out of the university. They said, you can't, if they were studying electrical engineering, they said, no, this is outside the parameters, you can't do it. No, that's not true.
Oh, man.
No, it's not true.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the guys, my boss was a Colonel Christensen, and he has a son that was, I understand, an engineer up in Air 51. And then he couldn't do what he wanted to do, so he came back and got became an attorney, and he's a patent attorney. And he said that's so he could patent whatever he thought of instead. He didn't have to go through a bunch of people. And I think he's still here.
Yeah? I
think so, named Christensen. Oh, the son would still be here. His dad's dead. But, yeah, it was a funny story. We were sitting on our bicycles, and it was raining at night, and he told me, he told me he used to drive heavy equipment. And, of course, I didn't argue or nothing. I didn't know. And the street was full of potholes and water and gravel dug and beat out by trucks. And we were sitting there on our bicycles, and he said, this road needs grading. And I said, yeah, it sure does. And that's all it said. I went driving down through there the next morning in my Jeep, and somebody tried to grade it, but it was full of holes for the blade to dig in, and it was worse than before. And I got down, and he came to work there. I said, you been grading the roads? Yeah. He said I couldn't get that blade straight. But he's my boss. He was brilliant in electronics. But
that's funny.
Yeah, he recommended me for the Distinguished Flying Cross. At Colonel did.
You had a quick story. You were stationed in Alaska, and you were fishing.
Yeah.
And you were going up the river, and you said that there was an ice fall or something you wanted to get near, and your engine died.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about that. We was on Neck River, and we was about 10 miles below a big lake. It was 80 miles long, and we wanted to go fishing up there. And I had a friend up there that was a recluse. All I ever knew was he was Red. That's his name. And he wouldn't fool with anybody because some GIs probably got drunk and messed up his cabin. Who knows? But they said he won't have nothing to do with you. And I kept going up there fishing. In the early spring, nobody else would fish but me. Every cast, I'd have to chip the ice off my guides. That's how bad it was. And I'd see him standing out there looking. And about the third time I did that, he said, "Come on." And I knew that I'd broken the ice with him, and I became a friend. And his cabin was 3 thick with paperbacks he'd read. He'd come down to our radar site about once every 2-3 months and take all he could carry on his back and take them back, read them, and then he'd make installation out of them. You couldn't bring up a subject he wasn't well aware of.
Oh,
I'm telling you, he was.
Yeah.
But he's the one that I was sitting in his cabin one time, and he said, "See that hole in the door?" And I looked, and there's a big hole right in his door. He said, "I killed a grizzly bear right through that hole."
Oh my!
He said, "That grizzly come here and smell my meat in the permafrost like a cellar under the house, and said that bear smelled it, and it was wintertime, and he said, it's me or him." And he said, "I shot him, and there's a slug I killed him with." Just kind of smushed up. But I was in the company of an expert.
Yeah.
And he told me the worst thing I could encounter up there was a cow moose with a calf. He said, that thing will kill you before a bear.
Yeah.
He said, you can't get in a tree, it won't knock down.
Yeah.
And you'll fall out and she'll trample you. Yeah.
Every time you went fishing out there, hunting out there, you always had to carry a...
we always carried a big gun. Yeah, I carried a 44 Magnum. I had all the hide rubbed off of my hips from hiking through the tundra with it at 44.
Yeah.
And I said, but it's worth it if you needed it.
Yeah, I bet.
One time we went to camp and it was so bad. While we was fishing, the bear came into our Quonset hut camp that they told me about. It was about 12 miles hike. And when we came back, it was totally wrecked. Every can in there was smashed. The stove was put out. A bear come in there and wrecked that place. And we was fishing like 300 yards away. I said, how quick can we get out of here?
Yeah.
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 But I remember that the mosquitoes were so bad, and the white socks, a little bitty thing like a mosquito, worse than a mosquito. And he destroyed our spray that we used, or I don't know what it was to keep them off. That bear did. And I said, I don't know how we're going to get out of here. They'll eat us alive. And the guy said, or somebody came up with the idea, said, let's build a fire and take all these cedar branches and put on it and just smother it out till there's nothing but smoke, and let's get up on it and loosen our clothes and just get ourselves in that smoke. And it worked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we stood up there till we couldn't hardly smell ourselves. We just smelled
there
like
must have been a lot of
seed.
mosquitoes. I mean,
man, they'd just be in front of your face and you couldn't hardly see.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, but that was a wild trip up there.
Yeah.
We didn't catch any fish.
Yeah.
But I learned, every time I went out, I learned a bunch by these people.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to tell you about the time that the river froze over, and we're 17 miles away, and it blew the jam out from under the ice, and the ice fell into the river, and it was probably 3 feet thick and 100-yard slab, and it fell into the river, and it shook us 17 miles away. And I said, "Do we have an earthquake?" And they said, "No, the river just broke." And I said, "What does that mean?" And they explained it. And they knew I was a fisherman, and they said, "Now's the time to go fishing for silver salmon." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "The river's not frozen." He said, "It'll take it a week to freeze back over." Mm-hmm. And so we went up there with a truck, an Army truck, 6x, with 2 boats, and they would tie ropes on us and let us down that slab of ice. It's about 45 degrees, about 50 yards down to the water, and they let us down.
That doesn't sound dangerous at all.
And then we'd go fishing, and they had to wait in the truck.
Yeah.
And when we came back, we tied the rope, and the truck would pull us back up, and that's the way we'd get out. And we was out there fishing, 2 boats, and the water was running real swift. That's where I lost my wedding ring, and I saw it go down, no way to get it. But anyway, my hands was cold, shrank from the thing, and I pulled a glove off, and there went my ring. But anyway, this other boat that we was fishing with, they lost the engine. And it started drifting towards where it was being sucked under that slab that was back on the water. And it was just slurring down under there and some going over the top. And these guys were screaming because it was sucking them down that way. And I poured the coal on that little old engine I had, and I told the guy in the boat, I said, take the anchor. We took the anchor off, and I said, throw that anchor rope and try to get it to them. And I said, if we can get it to them and I can pull them out of here, I'll pull them out of here. But I said, if it starts pulling us towards that hole, turn it loose and I'm getting us out of here. And so he threw it, and it went to them the first time. And they got a hold of it, and they would have it hold with both hands. It's swift. And I had the low engine, it about a 10 horse, and I had it wide open, and it wasn't getting in, we wasn't going forward at all. We were going sideways, so I had to just slip it sideways. slipped it all the way across where that slab was and up against the slab, and then we pulled them out and got on the rope and pulled us up and put us in the boat. We went home.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah. That was scary.
Yeah.
But I got photographs. We had about 4 or 5 silver salmon, weighed 12, 15 pounds. But that's where they told me, you go up there right now and you'll catch them. And they were right.
Yeah.
But that was I got into a lot of endeavors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Bob, this has been great. I'm so glad you came on, and thanks for sharing all these stories. And
Well, you're
it's
sure
been
welcome.
Absolutely terrific.
I've enjoyed life so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gets better when you guys get older. You look back and recall things that meant something now, but then it probably didn't mean much. But you'll find out. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is as you get older? What are some of the things that is there any things that you wish you'd done differently? Or is there any things that you would give advice on to some young people? Or
probably not. I wouldn't change my career. I probably would follow my dad's advice, and he carried me to a car dealership when I was 18, and he said, "I'll buy you a brand new convertible of your choice if you go to junior college."
Yeah.
I said, "I'm out of here." And I was.
Yeah.
But that's just the way I thought,
Yeah.
you know. And then when I went along, and I qualified to go jet pilot training, and I was single. And when you were married in those days, you couldn't go to pilot training. They wouldn't let you go. And I said, I took all the tests and qualified and everything, and then I married.
Mm-hmm.
And it disqualified me. And I said, well, that's all right. I said, I follow the Lord. I really mean that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I follow him. His Holy Spirit tells me which way to go, and I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, that's what happened to me. And so I went his way.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the way my whole life's been. I said, I've been in some places I thought, I'm not getting out of this one.
Yeah.
And then that's when I would really call on the power that's above mine.
Yeah.
And he always came through.
Yeah.
That's a true story, absolutely. Yeah. And I see so many people today, young people especially, that's searching for peace and happiness. And they're running everywhere trying to find it. And they don't know where it's coming from. I said, you can be at peace and happy and follow somebody that's more powerful than you are.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. But that's my whole story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful, and I'm glad you came on, and I love you a lot. So
I know you do.
Yeah,
I love you guys too. And you've got a great life out here, and I know where that comes from. It comes from hard work and being adventurous, taking a chance.
Taking a chance is right. Yeah. Well, this has been great, Bob.
Well,
so thanks again, man.
Right. You're sure welcome.
All right.
All right.
All right, man. It's awesome.